Hey everybody, welcome back to Harris Family Adventures. This week we went to the Nebraska History Museum in downtown Lincoln, Nebraska. I will put the website down below. It is a three-floor museum. It costs $5 for adults and $3 for kids. We like to start at the top and work our way down. So this was the third floor. This was a traveling exhibit from the Smithsonian all about American democracy. This was actually very well timed. I would like to take credit for it, but we just started our democracy class through our homeschool curriculum, so this was perfect. We had learned a lot about democracy and voting and the Revolutionary War already and kind of the founding of our country, so we had a lot of good tie-in there. This was one of the few interactive exhibits. They said, should we trust the majority or not? Should we have political parties or not? And so Reese got to say agree or disagree. There wasn't a right answer, and then it would tell him who agreed or disagreed with him. So there were probably 3 of these. It started with kind of the forming of our country and some of those revolutionary thoughts that were happening, and then how are we going to actually run this company or this country now that we've formed it, and that type of thing. Then it went on to talk about voting and the history of voting and who was able to vote and who wasn't able to vote. Overall, not a huge hit this floor. I did like this section. It was all about the history of campaigning and different materials that were used, like buttons and pins and bumper stickers and commercials. So they had these 5 commercials playing different ads from over the decades. So that was kind of a fun thing. It was hard. They were all playing at the same time, so it was hard to hear any one, but I liked that idea of showing different times and different messages that were sent out. Again, that was an interactive place where you could think, how much do I want to have rights and responsibilities, like jury duties, should it be required, that type of thing. You can see there was a lot of empty space. Overall, I will say for the whole museum, not just this exhibit, they seem to have more room than they have things to put into the room. Then we went down to the second floor. This was an exhibit called Nebraska Unwrapped. So it was all about things that had a connection to Nebraska. I will say what I struggled with on this floor is kind of understanding the rhyme or reason of placing things. Here we have a dollhouse from the 20th century, and it was cool. I love dollhouses. I love this type of thing. It was built by a carpenter in Nebraska. So that's the connection. It wasn't any more than just that one piece. A very cool piece, but that one piece. So you might have something from the 19th century next to something from the 21st century. It didn't seem to really make sense. And again, you can see there's a lot of empty space. So they do have some different things, but it didn't seem to be very cohesive. I guess that's the best way to say it. I'm not very cohesive in my words, so I can't blame them. So we did walk around and read all about different things. There wasn't much interactive except for towards the end. You can see there a picture of our second Capitol building. If you saw our Nebraska Capitol tour, I'll link that video below. We're on to our third. So that was kind of cool to see the topper of it, to see they had the old originally like photographs, and then they had been blown up. This was a cookbook published by somebody in the 20th century, I think like the 1930s, and I just loved like small town cookbooks, church cookbooks, that type of thing. So this was an exhibit they had. She had run a catering business and also a school for young brides who are learning to keep house, and so this was one of the things that was on display. If you want to pause the video and make any of these recipes, I would love to hear which one you made. Love to hear that and how it turned out. If you've been wanting that jeweled salad recipe, there it is right there for you. So again, that's a really cool thing, but it was just kind of on its own. Like it didn't seem to have a connection to anything else around it. Overall, I would say that's the general vibe. Here's another kind of, this was literally right next, or like right near it. This was a ship built by a prisoner of war from Germany. So he was housed at Fort Robinson, and that was really interesting. I've been to Fort Robinson in western Nebraska many, many times. I didn't even know they had prisoners of war there during World War II. That ship was built by a prisoner of war there. So I learned things, absolutely. It just kind of seems strange. There's a painting of a small town in Nebraska at Christmas time. Not connected to Fort Robinson in any way. I guess they're both examples of art. Here is an old marching band uniform from the University of Nebraska. Our football team is very big here, so I feel like I understand why they had that. But then they feature it right next to a slot machine. Okay, Sure.
Girls
So
on
there's
there?
that theme of a Nebraska connection. And you can see there is a lot of information, but you just kind of get to a point where you're just not going to read the whole thing. This was the end of the second floor for us. This was all about the blizzard of 1888, which again, in the Capitol building, we have a mural that shows kind of a teacher rescuing children during that blizzard. It's always been one of my favorites. And this was a pretty cool exhibit. You could make snowflakes. You could see pictures of snowflakes from Snowflake Bentley. You could see how far away you would need to be to hear or see anything during the blizzard. They had some poetry featured by our poet laureate Ted Kuzer, describing what it was like during that time. On the other side, they had a display where you could see how the temperature rose in the morning, and then all of a sudden this blizzard came out of nowhere and how it fell to 40 below zero Fahrenheit. So that was a really cool thing to see. We have a lot of farming here in Nebraska, so they also have like old wives' tales about like nature and farm and how that could help you predict the weather, and you would make a guess if it's true or false. Then they would show you what science actually says. They also had here an exhibit of different things that you might find in homes in Nebraska throughout the ages, and other things like saddles. Then we went down to the first floor. This was an exhibit about kind of ancient Nebraska, things that archaeologists have found. They did describe, I liked this exhibit, what's the difference between an archaeologist, a geologist, and a paleontologist, and who is interested in what. So that was kind of interesting. Again, you can kind of see here, there is a lot more space than there are things. A couple of interactive things here, like you could place things in order that you found them, but there wasn't a ton. Overall, I would give this museum, again, pretty easy to get to in downtown Lincoln, doesn't cost a lot of money. I would probably give it a 6 out of 10. Have you been there? What do you think? Do you have any questions? Let me know.
I can't forget the day we met. Your eyes so blue, me pressing through. I can't forget the day we met. Your smile so bright, it made me swoon. I love